Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. We're going to work on the Brownie Potter badge, steps 1 through 4. Whoops. Here we going. If you guys are on, go ahead and just add who you are and where you're from as we get started. So again, we're going to accomplish steps 1 through 4. So first, we're going to kind of take a little walk around the house and find some pottery just in our everyday lives. Step 2, we are going to get to know clay and kind of talk about the different types of clay really kind of briefly. And then we're going to learn how to make different types of pots. So right here, I've got a coil pot that I already started smoothing off. So we'll learn how to make either a coil pot or a pinch pot, as well as a slab pot. So I used some bark with this one, so that's why it's kind of weird. There's bark pieces on it. Then after that, hello! Ooh, New Jersey, Dayton. Awesome! Thank you for joining. And then the fourth part of this badge is just making another work of art. So I'm going to give people a couple more seconds to join. And then the very last step that you'll have to do on your own is step 5. So that's going to be painting and glazing a work of your own. Or not necessarily a work of your own, but a work. So if there's any of those kind of paint pottery classes or studios around, you could do that. So that might take a little bit depending on their availability. Waynesfield, Ohio, hello. Ooh, New York, thank you. Lots of New Jersey. Hi, Carrie. Hey, Jigsaw. Hey, Dory. We've got Ivy from New Jersey, Alina from New Jersey, Ellen and Aaron from Havertown, Pennsylvania. Ooh, more New Jersey, Illinois. Hello, Ashley. Molly from Clarence. Evie from Sylvania, Ohio. Elizabeth from Cincinnati. Hello, Olivia from Queens. How come we cannot see you? The screen is black. Is everybody else having that problem? Is the screen black for other people? Piper from New York, Orlando, hello, Cheviot, hi Lily, Philadelphia. Could you guys type in the comments if anybody else isn't seeing me or if the screen is black for them? No, we can see the screen fine from Virginia. Okay. So who was that? Who had asked about that? Rachel, I'm not sure. Maybe if you log off and just kind of click out and then click back in, other people are saying they can see the screen. So I'm not necessarily sure. Okay, so now that we've got quite a bit more people, I'm just going to go over what we're doing again, and then we'll kind of take the tour around and see what kind of pottery you can find in the house. So again, my name's Tori. I'm an outdoor program manager with Girl Scouts of Western Ohio out of the Cincinnati area, and I'm going to share one of my hobbies with you, so pottery. So I've been probably been doing pottery for about a year. I mostly hand build, so that means I do not use the wheel, and I imagine most of you do not have a wheel at home, so that's probably not going to be a big problem. So we are going to go ahead and do step 1. So we're going to kind of hunt around the house. Please excuse the house. I have 3 very hairy animals that shed a lot, so it's a little hairy, and kind of look at pottery in our everyday lives. So I'm going to grab the computer, and I'm sorry if it goes a little crazy as I'm walking around. And we're going to kind of check out what kind of pottery we have, or what kind of ceramics we have in the house. So I'm just going down the stairs. Boop, boop, boop. So I know, let's see. So if you can see, kind of going around the windows. So right here, this is a really cool plant hanger that I made. I don't know if the light might be, there you go. This is a really cool plant hanger that I made. This was my first project. The plant, I moved it because it wasn't doing well in this window, but it's a really cool slab. In this cabinet, I don't know if you guys can see, there are a couple pieces. So there's a hand-built kind of, let me open up the cabinet and show you. So we have this piece. So this is kind of just like a little cooking crock. And then right here, this was a muffin kind of pan that I made. So go ahead and keep looking around the house, see what other kind of ceramic things we can find. So here, the lighting is back right there. So this right here, whoop, this is a planter. So a lot of planters are probably ceramic. This is actually an African violet planter, but as long as I don't put water in it, it lets our friend not get too overly watered. So this is a pilea, and it's a money plant. So it's pretty cool. Let's take a look around. I'm not seeing anything over here. Can you guys see? Okay. So these are little pumpkins. These are actually things that you guys can make when we start making pinch pots, because it's actually two pinch pots kind of put together. So this guy is ceramic. Oop, I forgot to pull out the plates. In here, these guys are china, so that is a type of ceramic. So they're pretty cool. So a lot of your plates are probably stoneware. Ooh, over here, another windowsill. Right, let me see if I can get it. So we've got terracotta. So there we go. This is actually earthenware. So we can kind of talk about the different types, there we go, of clays and what they kind of do. We've got a couple more planters over there that are ceramic. We'll head over here. This is my mug collection, so that's all ceramic, and that's one of the reasons I started doing pottery, is because I really was enjoying mugs and I was collecting them, and I thought I could try it as well. We've got this crazy giant, like, I don't know what to call it, like an umbrella holder that's about 2 foot tall, and that guy is ceramic. So I encourage you guys to look around the house and see what kind of things you can find that are ceramic or made from pottery. I could go around the whole house, but we would be here all day just looking at pieces. But I encourage you to do that after the video is over. So I'm going to head back over to my little studio that I have set up. I'm going to try to turn it around so you can see. So I'm not very good at this holding the computer thing. So this is my studio. It's pretty little. But I'll go ahead and start kind of pulling pieces out so you can see what's all part of it. So, down here, this is just a piece of cement board that I've taped off. So this is kind of what I'm going to be using to work on. And it just goes on top of a foldable table. I use a rolling pin because I do a lot of slab built stuff. So this helped me roll out the clay that I'm working with. I got a spray bottle with water. I have some yardsticks. So they're both about, I don't know, 1/4 of an inch thick. So I roll out, let me see if I can move you down. There you go. So I'll get a piece of clay and I'll put these down and then roll out on it like this so that my clay stays an even thickness. I I also have my tools. So I got like a little bucket right here. So I've got my wire cutting tool. So I use this to cut a piece of clay off of my block of clay. So the clay I have is cone 5 or 6 stoneware, or 5-6 stoneware. So that just refers to the heat it needs to fire correctly in the kiln. But my clay comes in a big block of like 25 pounds, so I have to use this tool, kind of like this, to cut off a piece of clay to work with. Let me see. I've got my metal rib, so I use this to kind of smooth out the clay so it doesn't have weird bumps or any abnormalities in it before I start working with it. This is my fettling knife. So I just use this to kind of cut the pieces of clay. But if you guys just have some plastic cutlery, so a plastic knife, a fork, and a spoon, you'll be good to go. Let me see what else I have. These are loop tools, so you can kind of, I use them mostly just to scratch designs into things, but you can use them to kind of cut ribbons of things out as well. This is just a little tool I've been using to smooth things with. I don't know if you can see it. It just has like a tiny little end on it like that. That's really nice to get places you can't get your finger in. This is kind of cool. This is a sgraffito tool. So sgraffito is when you kind of scratch designs into the clay after applying an underglaze. So that's what this guy does. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and talk about the clays a little bit more in depth really quick. So clay, where does that come from? So clay actually comes from the ground. It's kind of a combination of like decomposing rocks and other natural materials. It's usually found around like rivers or creek beds. So if you've ever been to Camp Stony Brook, that's one of my camps. We have a really cool clay wall that we go and play in a lot and make like clay facials. But that's pretty much what clay is at a really basic level. It does have some other kind of trace minerals in it, but I think that's probably okay. It comes from the ground. So I've got a thing of clay right here. I got a little ball of clay. So, you know, this one's brown, but depending on where the clay's from, it can be a whole bunch of different other colors. So there's white clay, there's clay that's more gray, and then there's even some like really orangey red clay depending on the sediments and stuff that are found in the area that you got it from. So it's very malleable. And then, so this kind of clay is actually stoneware. So it's hard, it's durable, it's most of your plates are probably made of, unless you've got some nice china hanging around. Another type of clay, so I showed you that terracotta pot and I forgot to bring it back up here, but that is earthenware. So it contains kind of bigger pieces than what is in your normal kind of stoneware clay, and usually it's used for things like pots, the terracotta pots, roof tiles, and it fires a little bit lower. I'm going to pull it up really quick. So it's a temperature between 1700 degrees and 2100 degrees. You usually don't glaze earthenware, so it's still kind of porous after, which means it has kind of holes in it, and water can kind of go through, which makes it soaks up water, which is good for plants. So that's why terracotta pots are really nice. Another type of clay is kaolin or china clay. So that's going to be really, really fine clay. Oops. And kaolin is really, really delicate, so it tears if bent. You have to be really careful when working with it. It's not very plastic, so it doesn't really move a lot like our stoneware clay. and it needs to be fired really, really hot. So between 23,000 and 25,000 degrees. So it's very hard when it's done, and it's almost translucent, so you don't, it becomes just like really melted and really smooth and kind of glass-like. So those are the ceramic clays. Does anybody have ceramic clay that you'll be using today, or are most people using like polymer clay? So that polymer clay is like our modeling clay that we usually use like in school and stuff like that. So if you have that, that is a really good substitute for today because we only had a couple days to grab supplies. But there's a couple things that you won't necessarily need to do when you're using your polymer clay. So with ceramic clay like this, if I'm attaching things to it, I need to kind of take, I'll use a fork, and I kind of scratch it, boop, 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 boop. And then I'll apply some slip to it. I'm not going to actually do it because I want to use this to connect it to something else. If you're using polymer clay, you don't have to do that, but you can still practice or at least learn the technique. So when you get some ceramic clay, you can do that. Does anybody have any questions about clay before we get started learning the different things that we can build? And I just want to touch on storing clay. So since clay does have water in it, it needs to be stored in like a plastic container. So let me go ahead and grab my big block of clay to show you. Mine's just in a big plastic bag. So this is my clay that I use. So it's really important that it's in some sort of plastic, and then that you're making sure to tie it off so that it stays nice and moist. So that's kind of how the clay comes. Okay, any questions? So, oh, it looks like I've got some comments. Oop, are other people? Okay, so it looks like the screen was buffering. I'm sorry. I don't know if maybe my internet isn't strong enough, but I'm hoping that during replay maybe it won't buffer. Okay. So those were kind of the types of clays. So now we're going to kind of get into making different things. I got a really fun fact though, that did you guys know that Juliet Gordon Low, so like the founder of Girl Scouts, actually did a lot of sculpting, and she sculpted busts out of clay and stuff like that. So I thought that was really cool. And clay and pottery has actually been around for a really long time. The oldest fragments of pottery that have been found by archaeologists are from 14,000 BC. 1400, I'm sorry, 1400. And I had another really fun fact. The wheel, so that's how you can make pots and stuff just by going around in a circle like this on the wheel. That was created in about, oh, it was really cool because they think that throwing pots on the wheel actually started before people were using the wheel like as a wheel. If I find it, I'll let you know. But it was like 800 BC, I think. It was really, really interesting. So, hopefully you guys have your clay on you so we can get started. So we're going to go ahead and make 3 different shapes. So, I have just a ball of clay. So if you guys have your ball of clay, go ahead and grab it. And then if you guys could comment if you're using polymer clay or if you're using like ceramic. Okay, so if you are using ceramic clay, I'm going to go ahead and kind of go down here so you guys can kind of see what I'm doing. One of the techniques that you use is called wedging. So let me kind of roll him out because I've already wedged him. But it's kind of pushing all of the air out of the clay. So since I cut mine off of my block, it's brand new clay, I don't really have to wedge it very much, if at all. But you can reclaim clay. So if you use a piece and or make a piece and it breaks, you can go ahead and wedge it a lot, like 40, 50, 60 times. So what I'm kind of doing is I'm pushing against the sides and kind of just driving downwards, and it kind of creates kind of like this little ram head. So as it kind of does that, it pushes the air out. So I'm just going to do that a little bit, and then I'm going to kind of finish him off. Let me see what people are saying real quick, just in case anybody had a question. That is wedging. Okay. So it looks like most people have Crayola or air dry clay. Yeah, if you have Play-Doh, we can still use the same techniques. Crayola, air dry clay. Yeah. So, perfect. So you guys don't have to wedge your clay then. So that's just an extra step that you don't have to do. So I'm just going to kind of finish them off. And I think we're going to start with our pinch pot first, since I just have this gigantic piece of clay. So go ahead and make a circle or a sphere, math, and we're going to go ahead and if you're right-handed, you're going to use your right thumb, and if you're left-handed, you're going to use your left thumb, and we're just going to stick our thumb right in the middle and kind of push it, not so that it comes out, but kind of towards the end. So you kind of, oh, you can't see it. I've got my thumb in the clay. And so you're going to use your other two fingers, so your pointer and your middle finger. Let me try to show you guys this. And you're just lightly going to press. It's not really a full like pinching, it's really like a gentle pressing. And you're going to go ahead and go around and start at the bottom. So I'm kind of starting down here with the pressing, and as I get farther around, I'll start moving up. This hand just kind of supports everything. You're just going to kind of gently press the clay together. And as you keep going, that hole starts getting bigger and bigger. So I told you guys earlier that these pumpkins that I made are actually two of these pressed together. So it's a really fun thing that you guys can make. You can make acorns. Another fun thing is just kind of like a crazy looking monster. And we're just going to slowly press this around. And I'll show that once we're a little bit farther with our pinch pot. Let's see if anybody has any questions while we're doing this. And this might take a couple minutes. And you're just going to gently press. Sorry, my cat is behind me and scratching the chair. So if you hear a bunch of scratching, that's what she's doing. If you're using ceramic clay, you might start getting little cracks in it. So what I usually do is I just spray a little bit of water on my working surface, and then I just kind of go over it like that, just to kind of smooth it back out. As you're using ceramic clay, it kind of starts, the moisture kind of starts evaporating and like getting absorbed by other things. So if I touch it onto this, you can kind of see there's like a little mark, right here. There's a little mark of kind of like the water and stuff like that from it, a little bit of clay. But like your hands will start absorbing it. My hands are really dry, so I think it just kind of takes it up. And then you can kind of start lightly making a foot to it. So the foot is kind of like the bottom of the pot. And you want to make sure that the edges are still kind of thick. So they're not super thin. And then you can kind of smush your edges a little bit so they're nice and flat. So this would kind of be the first part of a pumpkin. My other pinch pot is a little bit more gigantic, but I guess I could maybe make it more that size. But to make a pumpkin, there we go. What you would do is you would take your two pinch pots and put them together like this. See how that kind of makes that pumpkin shape? Since I'm using ceramic clay, I would, here's my fork. Take my fork and I will go ahead and rough this up. This is called scoring. So this is really just gonna help keep the two pieces together once we push them together. So I'm just scoring both pieces. Boop, 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 boop. If you have a really stiff paintbrush, you can do this with the paintbrush. And then I just have my slip. So I actually, so slip can be a couple things. I don't know if you can see it. It's kind of lovely looking in it. You can use, most people just use part water. Sorry, all you see is my chin. Part water and just clay. And I actually use a little bit of vinegar, or mostly vinegar. That's just what we've been doing at the studio that I go to, and it's been working for me, so that's what I do. So I'm just going to go back to making our pumpkin. So I've got my vinegar, and I'm just going to kind of go ahead and go around it like this. Looks like I've got some comments. So if you're using your modeling clay, you do not need to do this part necessarily. You can score it still, but you do not need to take the slip. Okay. And then you just kind of put them together. Oops. Even this guy back out. They're not quite the same size. And then you just kind of move them so that those sides are not quite matching up perfectly. There we go. So they're kind of getting squished together. This side's going to need a little extra assistance. There we go. But once you kind of get them together, they're not moving too much. So you might need some help. It looks kind of like a cupcake, actually. So we still have this. This is our connection point. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of go this way, this way, this way, all the way around. And then we'll go the other way. So I'm just going to flip it over. This way, this way, this way, just to kind of interlock it. And then you can take a spoon or just your finger. If you're using the ceramic clay, you're going to want to get a little bit of water. And you'll just kind of start smoothing those lines together. You're just going to kind of smooth it all out, back and forth, kind of interlocking the two clays together. Boop, boop. And the other clay, the one clay obviously I just did. The other one I made yesterday, so he's a little stiffer. Okay. And so then you'll kind of smooth him out. You can make the shape a little bit more pumpkin-y if you want. But this plastic spoon is actually a really good tool that you can use to smooth stuff out. I'm just gonna go ahead, go around, and smooth him out. This tart's gonna take a while, so we're not gonna do the whole thing. I'll just do a couple parts of it so you can kind of see. And then if you have any kind of pieces, flakes, you can pull them off. But you're just gonna go around and start smoothing him out like that. I really like working with clay. It's very earthy, it smells really good, like being outside, and I find it to be like just really calming and relaxing. But once you have your clay all kind of smoothed out, which this guy still needs some time, but that's okay. You'll kind of make the bottom of where you want your pumpkin to sit. So we're going to go that way. And then you can use something like this to just kind of make the pumpkin lines. And then you can kind of go through and smooth them out a little bit more. And then you can take a little piece of clay and make the little, what is that called? The vine as well. So I'm just kind of pinching a little piece together. I kind of got like a square bottom right there. So this guy still needs like 30 minutes of work at least before he's good, but I'm going to go ahead and move over to the next piece. And then you would just score and slip him there, and then you've got like a cute little pumpkin. Okay. Just check and see if we've got any questions on any of that before we go over to making a coil pot. How long does it take to dry? So it really does depend on kind of your environment, on how long it takes to dry. Probably about a day. So there's different kind of stages of clay. So this is just a piece, and this stuff as well. This is really wet clay, so this is really malleable. It's very kind of squishy. You can do a lot with it. So that's kind of one of the first stage of clay. So it's very wet, and then you will go into leather hard. So that's, I don't know if I have anything this might be leather hard. So it's not quite as squishy as this one is, but this is a really good time to kind of carve into it. So I'll just carve my name on the bottom. Oh, that's too big. Because it has a little bit more, it's a little bit more stiff, a little bit more rigid. So it's a better time to kind of carve stuff. And then after that we have bone dry. So I know I have a couple pieces that are definitely bone dry. Here we go. This guy was an attempt at wheel throwing. He actually isn't that bad. You can kind of tell on the inside that it was wheel thrown. So this guy's bone dry. That means all the water that was in him is sucked out and he is ready to be fired, so put in the kiln. He's very brittle because it is all dry, all that moisture is out, so you have to be really careful if you're transporting this back to like your studio to get fired, because he could break on the way back. So this is bone dry. If you make something and it's bone dry, you can, maybe if you're like, oh, I don't really like it, you can break it up here into little pieces and it can still be reclaimed. So until it's been fired, you can still reclaim any of the clay that you use. So I'm just getting my, kind of my bucket of misfit clay. So this is just water and all the clay that I have deemed inappropriate for use. So you can kind of see that this is a square. This was a piece of something that was bone dry that I didn't like. So you can break it up, put it in here, let it soak for a bit, and then you can pull it out. So a lot of it is very silty right now. So this stuff right here would make a pretty good glue for our clay. But then you can kind of pour out the water, let it sit for a little bit, and then wedge it for a really long time, and make it into regular clay again. So this is my apron that I usually wear because I can make a giant mess with pottery and with clay. So yeah, that's what this is. So if I have anything that doesn't work out, I just plop it in here and then I'll reclaim it. It'll make a really good slip, some of it in the bottom. Okay, so then there's bone dry. So bone dry, leather hard, and then wet. This is everything that's considered greenware, so it's not been fired yet. Then we've got Bisqueware. So this little cup is Bisqueware. So this means it's been fired one time. So after you fire it, then you can paint it or glaze it. And once you put it through, let me see, a second time, then it's glazeware. So this is just like a little mug that I made. So that's kind of the life process of a piece of clay. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and do coil pots. So again, you're just going to need a ball of clay. And coil pots are one of the oldest kind of type of pots that people made. I don't know where my sample went. Oh, there he is. So the really cool thing with coil pots is a lot of times you can't really tell that they're coil pots because after you coil them, so you can kind of see on the inside that it's coil. And I started smoothing it out on the outside on part of it and then didn't quite get to the whole thing. Is if you don't want it to be all coily, you can start smoothing it out. Or you can keep the coils as decoration. So coil pots. So first, we're going to need our piece of clay. And we're going to need to make kind of the foot or the bottom. Oh, thanks! I see people saying they're loving this. If you guys are enjoying this, I would check out some of your local pottery places. I know some of them are doing like take-home bags for kids when we're kind of social isolating. So I know that Whistle Stop in Loveland was doing it, Ohio, so that doesn't help everybody. But check out some of your pottery studios in the area and see if anybody's doing grab bags for kids. So I'm going to just pinch off kind of a piece of this, and this is going to be the bottom. So you're just going to kind of plop it down here. Things are going to start getting really shaky, so bear with me for a minute. So you're just going to kind of pound down on it. And this is going to be the bottom of our pot. So he's not super circular, but that's okay. You can fix that if you want to. Or he can be an abnormal shape, it's up to you, or an abstract shape. Just gonna, we've got a piece right here that's just a little bit thinner, so he's not gonna make a good foot. Okay, so here is our foot. So then, I'm just gonna move him out of the way because we're gonna need a little bit of space because we need to make our coils. So you're just gonna pinch off kind of a piece of clay, roll it between your hands just a little bit, and then we're going to put it down on the table, and then you're just going to really carefully, see how I kind of have my fingers spread, just really gently roll it back and forth. If you put too much pressure, it'll kind of start getting kind of floppy and kind of making thinner parts and thicker parts. So just kind of spread your hands back and forth. I'm going to my fingertips, kind of to the heel of my hand. This might take a minute. That's okay. I keep getting in the water I sprayed on here, so that's not helping super well. If anybody has any questions, you guys go ahead and add them in there while we're doing this, and I will answer any questions that I can. Okay, so we've got a pretty good looking piece, and go ahead and just make a couple of those so we don't have to keep coming back and forth while we're making our little pot. Having a rag around is nice while doing this. And you're just going to kind of roll it back and forth. My whole table is moving. not wanting to roll out. There he goes. I think he might be a little dry. Oop, looks like we've got a comment. How did people discover clay? That is a really good question. I don't know that we know exactly how they discovered it, but I'm assuming, yeah, I don't know that we know exactly how they discovered it. We just know that they did about 1400 BC. At least that's kind of when the first shard of clay that we were able to find has been discovered. But I will look into that because I'm not 100% sure. I just know that people found clay and somehow they figured out that if you fire it really hot, you can make like pots out of it. And people used pots for more than just like plants and stuff like that. You used your pots to carry water from places. You stored your food in it. They were really, really important. So Anna, I'm not 100% sure, but I will double check on that. So what we're going to do is first we're going to score the sides of our foot or our base. And then we're going to take, if you're doing ceramic, kind of go ahead and put your vinegar or your slip around it. And then we're going to take your little coil and we're going to go around. So to make it nice and even, I like to kind of cut it right here. And this just makes sure that things are really sticking together a little bit better. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit so you guys can see. And then I just kind of wiggle it and kind of push it down a little bit, not too hard, just to make sure it's really sticking to that piece below. Let's do that. So we've cut out our first little coil, and then we can take this, we're going to go ahead and score it again. Boop, 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 boop. And go around. Oops, not quite big enough. And connect it, and then kind of push it down a little bit to make sure that it's really connecting. And you can start making shapes that start kind of flaring out a little bit. So I've just been kind of stacking them directly on top of each other. But if you want to start getting a shape that starts to flare out a little bit, you just kind of go a little bit off center. And then after a couple coils, you'll start getting something that will kind of start flaring back out. So this is how to make a pinch pot. So I'll do a couple more rounds of this, just so you guys kind of get a hang of it and see how it works. Because when we go into our next step, so step 4, it's making just another piece of art using our new skills. So you can pick to do a work of art using coils, or you could make something using a pinch pot, or you could make something using slab pottery, which is what we're going to do next. So we're just going to cut that piece right there. Kind of make sure that it's all situated. Make sure it's not gonna go anywhere. You can make a really cute basket with this and kind of make some more long coils, and then you can braid a little basket like that. That would be a cute little fun little project, especially since it's spring. Or you can make it like a little bird's nest and put some eggs in it. Make some little eggs. So again, we're just scoring it. And you guys are probably going way faster than I am because I think everybody is using modeling clay. So don't mind me. Oh, we got another new comment. It looks like it's freezing. I'm sorry. I'm just going to keep going, and then hopefully it'll figure itself out during the replay. Hi, Cat. What you doing? Excuse me, Misty. I don't know what you're doing. Dude. Okay. Thank you. Hi, kitten. Okay. So, keeps freezing, we'll watch recorded version. Okay, yeah, I'm hoping the recorded version might be better. Okay. So this is our coil pot. So, like I said earlier, if you don't want the coils to be seen, you can actually use your spoon or your finger and just kind of start smoothing them out. You just need to kind of make sure you're supporting the inside, but you can just start kind of smoothing it out like that with a spoon or with your finger. There you go. Okay, so I know this, oh my gosh, we're already at 45 minutes. So I'm gonna go ahead, and you guys kind of got that, and start working on a piece of slab pottery. So what you're gonna need, you can use a ball of clay. I'm just gonna use a piece like this because what I like to start out with is just kind of smacking it on the table and just kind of pick it up and throw it, pick it up and throw it. Attempt to make it more of a rectangle and kind of flatten it out just a little bit. There we go. And this takes practice to kind of get it situated. Most of my work is using slabs. Okay, so kind of spread out a little bit. He's not perfectly flat. So that's where these will come in handy. So if you don't have them, that's okay. You can kind of squish it down with your hands. No problem there. But just make sure that it's going to be kind of about the same height throughout. So I'm just kind of going to roll it out. I'm sorry, my desk is like shaking because I have all this, like the ceramics and stuff on it. So I'm just going to kind of roll it back and forth. And the yardstick just makes sure that it's staying about the same thickness throughout. So I'll do it one way, and then I'll flip it over and do it another way. There. So we've got our slab. He's kind of little, but that is okay. So at this point, if you have a rib, I would just kind of take the rib, and it just kind of smooths it out. It makes kind of like a satiny sheen. It's really pretty. But you just kind of smooth out the clay, and then you can pick it up, flip it over, and smooth out the clay again. So depending on what you want to make will really depend on how big of a slab you make. I think I'm just going to go ahead and make another tiny little planter. I've got some planters that look like this, and I really like them. I grabbed a piece of bark from outside and just kind of rolled that on there, so I think I'm going to duplicate that again. You guys can make whatever you would like, but all you do is kind of smooth it out, and then I'm going to grab my little kind of knife and attempt to make some straight line cuts. So, cut that piece off, and then let's see. One thing to note about clay is once it's been fired both times, it kind of shrinks about 18%. So you want to make things a little bit bigger than what you want it to be, so it's not like super, super tiny. Polymer clay does not have that problem. Just gonna check, get a couple more comments. Make sure nobody else is having any freezing issues. Okay. So we've got kind of our little slab. If you have time, I would kind of let it harden up just a little bit so it's not super duper wet and kind of sticky. Polymer clay, again, shouldn't have that problem, but I'm just going to kind of, you can kind of see it's like leaving water marks behind. So it is slowly starting to dry out. Oops, kind of made it unpretty. So you're going to need kind of the part that goes around, but then you're also going to need to make the bottom. So I think I'm just going to take this piece of clay that I was using earlier and just kind of roll him out a little bit. To make the bottom. So I actually have a set of like cookie cutters. Here they are. A whole bunch of different sizes, circular ones, so that I can kind of use them to make the bases for all the things I make. So let's see, if I want this one, and I usually pick something that's slightly bigger, just so there's a little extra room. I'll go with this one. And I just, I'm gonna cut him out. And that'll be the base. And then all this extra clay can be used for other things. If you're making like a mug, you can kind of use some of this to make a handle if it's long enough. Okay, so here is our base. And then here is what's going to be the sides. If you have any cool textures you want to put on, you can do that right now. I went outside the other day and I found some really cool stuff out in my yard. So I found this fern, so I think I'm just going to put the fern right there. This probably starts getting into an outdoor art badge. So I would look into that before you make something. And I'm just going to lightly roll him on here. But you don't have to do that. You can use beads. You can do whatever you would like. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. Got a little fern. You guys see that? Got a little fern on there. Okay, so now that we have that, what we need to do is we need to cut this down so that we can join them together. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of cut that edge, and I'm kind of cutting on like a, maybe like a 45-degree angle. So I've got that on a 45-degree angle there, and so then I need to cut this one on a 45-degree angle as well. That way, when they get put together, they kind of match each other. Okay, so then we're going to go ahead and I'm going to use this for scoring just because it's a little finer. And I'm going to go ahead and kind of scrape this up a little bit and scrape the other side up a bit. It already has the vinegar on it. And then I'm going to stick them together. So you kind of stick it together first, wiggle it, make sure they're really sticking, and just give it a second, a little bit of time. And then once let's see, I'm sorry, it's like so far away from everything. You can start gently kind of blending this together. This is a little bit